Also joining us is Nia Malika Henderson and legal analyst Laura Coates. Good evening to you, Jeff. Thanks for joining us again. Laura, the Post is also reporting that the 90-day warrant has been renewed more than once. So what does it tell you that the FBI would have to prove if they were getting somewhere to get it renewed? Why would they do that? Keep renewing.
Well, it could mean one of two things. Either one, they did not acquire enough information to go forward with actual criminal charges, and they needed to have more time to do so. That's one explanation. The other one is that they have not gotten enough, but they have received enough to warrant additional causes for probable cause. Probable cause, of course, the courts are saying, is there some basis? Is there some reason to believe that there is a national security risk at the core of your request to investigate an American citizen? And if there's continuing information that is coming in that encourages the FISA court that this is an appropriate invasion, and they will continue to grant continuances and extensions. And that's what they've done here. Remember, it's very important what we just talked about, in that you have somebody who was on the radar of the FBI back in 2013, involved with somebody who, as we talked about last week, Don, was just deported after being released from prison 4 months before the end of his term. So that the connection that may have been made between the person, I believe his name is Buryakov, who is posing as a bank employee of VEB, a Russian-owned bank, now that link in the chain has been missing since he's deported. But you still have the FBI saying, we have more than smoke. We've got probable cause that there may have in fact been a crime. Give us more time. And the court said, whatever we saw, yes.
Interesting. So, Nia, you now. The Post reports that Carter Page was suspected of being a foreign agent and actively sought meetings with President Trump. And tonight, Page issued a statement, and I'll read part of it. He says, there have been various reports about FISA docs and FBI surveillance of him, but I was so happy to hear that further confirmation is now being revealed. It shows how low the Clinton-Obama regime went to destroy our democracy and suppress dissidents who did not fully support their failed foreign policy. It will be interesting to see what comes out when the unjustified basis for those FISA requests are more fully disclosed over time, including potentially the dodgy dossier, a document that clearly is false evidence which could represent yet another potential crime. Now, I'm sure there are going to be many, many more questions about Page and other Trump associates. But what do you take from his response there?
Yeah, it's fairly nonsensical. I mean, it's this sort of allegation about the deep state and Clinton and Obama as the bad guys who are somehow pursuing him illegally. I mean, the point of the matter here is that the FBI is looking into Trump associates. Obviously, we heard Comey say that in his testimony before the Senate Intel Committee a couple of weeks ago. And Carter Page has been out there on any number of occasions talking about this, and you had Trump on an interview with the Washington Post at some point name Carter Page as a foreign policy advisor. It's unclear, as Adam was saying, how close he was to the campaign, how much he was in the inner circle in terms of foreign policy. But I think, again, this puts this investigation about Russia front and center at a time, I think, when we had the Trump administration really for the first time from this administration really talk tough on Russia and really basically try to get Russia to do something different and call them out in terms of Syria. But again, this constant sort of trickling out of information about this investigation not helpful to this administration.
Jeff, I want you to take a listen to this.
We heard you might be announcing your foreign policy advisory team soon. If there's anything you can share on that.
We are going to be doing that. In fact, very soon, I'd say during the week, we'll be announcing some names. It'll always grow.
Any that you can start off with this morning with us?
Well, I hadn't thought in terms of doing it. If you want, I could give you some of the names. I wouldn't
be delighted.
I wouldn't mind. Waleed Ferris, who you probably know, PhD, advisor to the House of Representatives caucus, and is a counterterrorism expert. Carter Page, PhD.
So that was March 21st of 2016, Jeff, with the Washington Post. Both Adam with the Washington Post and Nia Malika with us both mentioned that exchange. Has the White House ever really explained how Carter Page ended up on this list of foreign policy advisors?
John, they haven't extensively. And I mean, look, that's back when Mr. Trump was emerging as the likely or potential Republican nominee just a little over a year or so ago. And quite frankly, he didn't have much of a big apparatus of advisors around him. He was, a very lean campaign, but he was sitting down with the editorial board there of the Washington Post. That was the publisher of the Washington Post, asking him questions there, and he did say that Carter Page was one of his advisors. Now, he was never a central player in the rest of the campaign, certainly like a Paul Manafort, who Sean Spicer, the White House press secretary, from this podium here at the White House, said, oh, he basically was not involved in the campaign. Well, that's not true. But Carter Page does fit into more along the lines of those descriptions here. He was never a central player in terms of the campaign apparatus, but he did have meetings, and he was, in the inner circle, and the president there, was saying that he was one of his advisors here. So, look, as this plays out, it is getting closer and closer to the inner circle here, and this FISA warrant, that the Washington Post is reporting tonight, is something that the Trump team and campaign will have a hard time blaming that on Susan Rice or others. I mean, this is a court of law, a judge that decides this here. So still a lot of questions about the exact involvement of Carter Page, how close he was to the inside of the Trump campaign, but it doesn't necessarily matter because he was an advisor to this president. We heard him say it right there. So if he was sort of number 1 or number 10, sort of irrelevant at this point, I think, Don.
Jeff, Nia, Laura, of course, Adam Intos as well, and our Manu Raju. I appreciate it.